Today we have a review of Naishi. This is a two-player only card game from Renegade, and I gotta tell you, spoiler alert, this one took me by surprise. I was told by someone that they thought that this would be up my alley.
I was one of those people.
Ryan was one of them. It was someone else also, but it is 100% on my alley. And if you like two-player games in general, but more specifically two-player card games, and if you like hand management, this game is pretty much a golden opportunity. Like it's like almost a no-brainer.
I mean, this game, it literally is. It is a hand management game at its core. You're going to start with a number of cards in your hand. You're going to start with 5 cards in your hand, and you're going to start with 5 cards out in what's called your line. Together, the cards in your hand and the cards in your line make up your territory. You're always going to have 10 cards, the 5 here, the 5 down here. As you're taking actions in the game, the management is more about setting yourself up for the best setup of cards by kind of trading the cards in your hand and the cards in the line with these cards in the river. And that's the whole strategy of the game, is to get the best 10 cards possible.
Yeah, so if you've played games like Fantasy Realms, it plays very differently, but the core objective there is to try to build a set of cards, in this case your 10 in your territory, in such a way that you're going to score as many points. And all the cards do different things, and they score conditionally based on a variety of different elements in terms of position, or how many of them you have, or how many of them you might not have,
or how many what they're next to,
all sorts of things. So there's a puzzle that's in front of you, but while you're playing, only half of that puzzle is in front of the other player. That's the cards in your line. And as you can see here, you're looking at these cards, and if you're like me, when I first played, I thought these were the backs of the cards. These are not the backs of the cards. These are just another one of the types of cards.
Yeah, they're very basic mountain cards.
They are very basic, and so you're going to start with 5 of those in your line. You're also going to start with 3 of those in your hand, plus 2 other cards. At the beginning of the game, you get 3 mountains, and then 2 other cards as they're dealt. Then, before the game starts, you're going to choose one of your 2 special cards to give to the other player, and then you shuffle those up, and that is your hand. Now, here is the rub. You cannot rearrange that. Those cards, imagine them as if they're right here under the line in this exact same order. So this card here would go here ultimately. So you're going to have to manage that, because at the end of the game, you're going to lay all those 5 cards out in that order and score it that way.
So let's take the mountain, for example, and you can kind of see the scoring is generally printed on all the cards. But like the mountain says, if you only have 1 mountain at the end of the game, that's great. You get 5 points. If you have more than 1 mountain, you lose 5 points. So the game is already kind of saying, try to get rid of as many mountains as you can. You've got those 5 to go. You've got the 3 in your hand. But if you look at any given card, it kind of shows you, okay, well, there's some positioning here. The pink Naishi card, it's 12 points if it's in the middle of the front of your line, and it's 8 points if it's in the middle of your hand. Like the horseman wants another different kind of card to be in front of it. All of the cards are going to have different weird positionings like that, and you're trying to make them all work.
Yeah, so for explanation purposes, if this were the end of the game, which would be a horrible end of the game, I would lay all my cards out like this, and this would be my setup. I would score all of these cards. I have more than 1 mountain, so I would get negative 5 points from my mountains. And then these other 2 cards would score accordingly. This wants to be in one of the 4 corners, so it would actually score 6 points. If I had other of this card in the 4 corners, it kind of has a scaled point value. Down in the lower left-hand corner of each card shows you how many of each card of that type are in the game.
Yeah.
So you can kind of like count cards a little bit. It's a big part of the game to go, oh, well, you've got 2 of the forts already, so I'm not going to chase forts. I'm going to put a fort back.
I was going to say, when you're playing the game, like David said, it's all printed on there, but what we really haven't explained yet is how the game works. And I'll do that really quick so you can understand our thoughts about the game. On your turn, you're literally just discarding a card and replacing it with a card. And you're discarding from one of your 5 slots, either one of the 5 slots in your hand, one of the 5 slots in your line. And whenever you discard a card, it's removed from the game and immediately replaced by the top card where it would go. So I could have decided to put that in my hand if I wanted to, instead by discarding the middle card of my hand. By doing this, David kind of has some idea now, okay, well, that's out there. You know some of what the points I'm gonna get are. But if I put in my hand, then it's a little bit of a memory game of like, what exactly? I know he had something good in the middle. I don't know. But you're just doing that back and forth. You're taking some other actions that we'll talk about. But this is the primary way you're building your hand, is just by exchanging with what's on top of the deck. So if you're trying to build a certain strategy like this one, where you want all of these fields adjacent to each other, well, this by necessity will not be adjacent to this as stated here.
Unless you got a connection somewhere with these two cards connecting.
Right. So you're really trying to think about that as you're building your hand out.
Yeah, and you might look in your hand and go, well, I've got the card that I need in my hand. David doesn't know that. So he'll see at the end that I'll connect those two fields and score lots of points. Now, of course, if I see him taking those fields, I'm going to have a hunch that he's working towards that and not just being dumb at playing the game. But like Ryan alluded to, that is the main thing you're often going to be doing. That's called developing your territory, where you're discarding a card and replacing it with a card from the line, the corresponding card from the line. But there are some other things you can do. As an action, you can also, and this is kind of one of the biggest actions, is to declare a decree. We've got these two tokens here. And on your turn, you're going to be able to use these tokens for a variety of different ways. One of which is sort of a free action where you can use an emissary and send it to one of these two spots.
Going off to court.
It's going to court, and you can do little extra actions, which we'll explain in a second. But if you want, as your whole action, you can put one of these tokens in the center, and that lets you trade one card from your line or hand with one card from their line or hand in the corresponding position. So if I took this second card, I'd be trading it with his corresponding card. Yeah. Now, I would do that typically if I saw that he just took a card from
or
here.
Like this, where this is in the perfect spot.
Exactly. So there's some information that you'll have. You're never going to, no one's ever going to do that randomly for the most part. You're going to wait to do that until you know some information. However, the big rub there is the longer you wait to take that particular action, the more dangerous it is. Because when you put your token here, that token right there is locked for good. You'll never get that token back. These other spaces we referenced, you can take an action to get tokens back from there. So let's talk about those right now. As a free action, you can put a token here to swap any two cards. Now, when you swap those cards, it's not any two cards anywhere in the game. I could take two cards in my hand and swap them with one another. I could take two cards in my line and swap them with each other. I can even take two cards in the river
and swap
them.
And you can swap one card from your hand with one card from your line in the exact same spot.
But those are the only swaps you can do with this action. Once you place that there, it's going to stay there until you take an action to get it back. Likewise, on this side, this one simply lets you discard any two cards from the river. So if there's a couple stacks where you're like, I don't ever want that, or more importantly, Ryan is going after that, I'm going to use this power to basically take two of these cards, discard them, and then flip over the new top two cards. Now, once I get into a situation, say like this, I can't use those special free actions until I have those tokens back. So as another full action, I can not take a regular turn and simply get my emissaries back so that I can have them in my power again. Now, the other interesting thing there is you could leave them out there kind of blocking those spaces. So for instance, if I'd used both of these over the course of a couple turns, I know now Ryan can't ever get rid of cards off of the river. Now, I can also not get cards rid of cards.
Or do any of those other abilities.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's, so to key in on a single part of the game, that's my favorite part of the game, is this board, to be honest with you. And the fact that it gives you these two discs, because it does a few things, I think, for the strategy of the game. I mean, there already is quite the puzzle of where do I want these cards to be? What is, how do I draft the best types of cards or whatever? That's a really important part of the game, and it's a great part of the game. But giving you these discs up here does a variety of things. First of all, in what I described earlier, where these are in the wrong spot, you could actually use the swap ability to swap them before, and then you could eventually maybe take both of those, but your opponent's probably not going to let that happen. That's where the discard comes into play. And also that idea of taking a turn to like refresh and pull your emissary back, you're taking up an action to do that. So if I don't like the board state, I can just delay by pulling one back and hope that maybe David clears one of these piles off that I don't like. And then lastly, that Imperial Decree that lets you swap a card. This is like such a mind game for me, because you're staring there the whole time and being like, okay, well, this Naishi is really good. If David steals this, if he steals this and puts it over there, I lose 12 points, he gains 12 points. That's a huge swing of points. So I might be, maybe I'll use it early, just to swap a mountain for a mountain, even just to get it out of play so he can't use it. But maybe I really want it later because maybe he'll play a fort in the corner and I have the other three forts and he doesn't know it. So I'm like, oh, I really need to steal your last fort or whatever. There's so many different ways that you can use that swap to really make a huge impact on the game. But if you wait too long, your opponent's probably going to use it. And again, they can use it to help themselves, or they can just use it to completely ruin your game.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
that's interesting.
Which in a two-player game, like many, is also helping yourself.
Oh,
when
sure,
you're hurting the other
sure.
person. And again, I want to stress this because I know we've kind of rapidly gone through a lot of this. That Imperial Decree, once one of the two players uses it, that space is locked. Only one player gets to use that only once in an entire game. So the longer you wait to use it, the more dangerous it is. Like Ryan said, you might be building up this beautiful thing. And as you get closer to the end of the game and you've got all of these cards replaced, or most of them, the other player is going to see, oh, well, that's a great card. Like, for example, the one you listed, having that right there is like, oh, that's 12 points. That's a 24-point swing if I take that card.
Huge.
And if I have junk right here, you better believe I'm going to try to do something like that. So it adds a lot of tension to the game for sure.
Well, yeah, and a lot of the strategy of the game it's based around mitigating the way these cards come up, because later in the game you're going to get into a situation where you've maybe replaced all the cards in your line and you really like that setup. You've replaced all the cards in your hand, you really like that setup, and maybe you have some perfect synergies. You still have to take an action on your turn.
Yeah.
So if you can't just pull your guys back, like I said, that's an action. Putting them out there is not an action. So even if you put an emissary out here to like swap cards, you still have to take an action. So you're kind of like, oh my gosh. Now, there is one caveat to that. At a certain point, you can declare the game over. If you think you have the perfect 10 cards, you can say, I'm going to use my turn to end the game, but you can only do that if one of these piles is empty.
Yeah.
So if it's not, you might have to ruin your perfect hand to take one more action in the game, which can be really sucky sometimes, but it's part of the game.
Yeah, that declaring the end of the game is a really cool aspect of this game as well. In fact, whenever I've taught this game, that's one of those moments where you teach this game and the other person learning is like, oh, like I can just say game over for my turn. Yeah, as long as you've gone down through one of these stacks. And again, that brings in some strategy because you could start earlier and go, okay, I'm going to whittle down this one stack, just burning these things, right? Like I'm not going to go after these fields. So I'm going to burn that. Oh, the next card I don't want, I'll burn that too. Just to kind of cycle through them. You can use this power to really help influence that. Once there are a couple stacks that are low, the game is very tense because once one is empty, any player at the beginning of the turn can just say, my action is to declare the end of the game. They don't take a turn. They just declare the end of the game. Their game is done. The other player gets one final turn, and then you're going to score up. The other way the game can end is if any two of the stacks are empty at any time, that will also trigger the end of the game.
Yeah, and that tension of watching these stacks runs out is important for another reason too. And this might not be obvious on your first play, but it becomes a really good strategy if you do burn through one of those stacks. If I've got mountains left, or if I've got cards I don't like, once this stack is empty, you can't trade with that stack anymore.
Yeah.
So if you empty out a stack and I've still got a mountain sitting here, I better hope that I got rid of every other mountain to make this worth 5 points, or that could be really bad for me. Not only that, like the 5 points is more of a consolation. If you manage it, that's nothing in this game. Like you really want to get rid of the mountain because some of these cards will score 9 points, 12 points, whatever. You can score quite a bit of points from some of these. Like those fields score 30 points if you get all 4 fields. So it's not great even just having 5 points. But if a stack does empty, that's when you're like, okay, well, I want to get rid of this card. Now I'm going to have to use the swap power to swap it with a different card. Then I can replace that card, but then that might move some of your other cards out of position and now you're not scoring as many points. So it's all of this thinking is happening in your head, but I wouldn't say that the game is overly long, and I don't know that it lends itself significantly to AP. Like it's pretty snappy.
It is incredibly snappy, and I can almost guarantee you when you play this game, you're going to want to play it again. Like this is one of those games, and it's not because you need all that time to sort of grok it and figure out like, oh, I can't. You can kind of pick up on what's happening here pretty quickly. It is interesting, and there is a bit of a twist here as we've described, but you just want to play again because it's like, okay, I set up a situation that I really liked. And also, I wanted to mention this earlier, another game that the scoring reminds me of, similar feels to like Castle Combo in that you're adding cards to this area and trying to best position them and choose cards that score you the most points in association with each other. The interesting thing here is you only have one of those lines visible to the other person at the table, and you have the other line in your hand. And there's some hidden movement that you can do quite a bit to manipulate that. So it's a little bit more surprising in the end who might win, because we've had games. I've played this a number of times. Ryan's played it even more. And every time, especially if you play it on BGA,
Yeah, I love the BGA.
you'll play it, and then the scores will happen, and you'll look at the other person, and you're like, what did you get? You got 36 points for something? What is that? And, you know, it's just one of the many cards that you necessarily didn't go after. And in fact, we won't go through all of the cards, but I just want to mention how some of these score. We already talked about the field. Naishi wants to be in this position here. The archers want to be by themselves. So you don't want an archer next to another archer.
Do you want them next to a fort?
If you had them adjacent to a fort, they're going to score extra points. And in fact, if you've even misplaced some forts, you might actually make up for some of the points you'd lost by not having the forts in the four corners. But if you had an archer here with a fort and a fort and a fort around them, that's an extra 12 points for that archer.
Yeah, and you've got like the advisor was just scoring different points based on where they are. I talked about the knight or the samurai. He wants a banner to be in front of him, but the banners themselves score for how many banners you have. But it's a lot of these too. Before, it's worth noting, like there's only like a certain number, like we talked about. These samurai, there's only 2. So
yeah, the banner holders, there's only 2 of those. There's only 2 ninja in the game as well. And the ninjas allow you to treat this card as though it's one of the other cards that you have.
Yeah, there's one. I actually won with this on BGA, which was great. The Ronin, which it scores you a ton of points.
So you have to have 10 different cards.
10 unique cards.
That's crazy.
And I've gotten that one time. I had 10 different cards, and I think there's only like 12.
There's not many
so
cards.
So you need to have like all of them.
One of them is the ninja, and like I said, the ninja copies one of the cards you already have. So necessarily, if you have the ninja and the Ronin, you're not scoring the Ronin.
So yeah, I did that one time. But those big wins and sometimes big losses when you're like, man, I just couldn't get anything going this time. I just couldn't get the cards out in the right way. But when you pull off a great game, when you have your perfect 10 cards and you feel like you've really used your emissaries well, or you did a big swap, I'll tell you, it feels like winning a game of chess.
It does.
You're like, oh man, I got exactly the moves that I needed when I needed them.
Yeah, when you have a big win, you might be susceptible to feeling like it's not going to get any better than that.
Right.
Like that may have been the best win I'll ever have in this game, but then maybe you do a little better even still the next game.
Yeah, we don't have this set up in front of us, but they already released one little expansion.
It's
that adds like
quite impactful.
Well, it is quite impactful, but it's like a little blister pack that adds like they have a legendary version of each of the characters, but what it also adds with that I really like are these like travelers with powers. And if you take one of those, it actually just like triggers a huge power. It doesn't score you any points, but it gives you powers. So the fact that they've already introduced like that one expansion, I mean, the sky's the limit for introducing new types of characters into this game.
Yeah, I guess you could probably swap in some characters.
For sure.
But I'll tell you this, just the base game is great. With that expansion, if you like 2-player games or you have a nice collection of them, highly recommend getting Naishi if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I would say for sure, like a lot of great 2-player games came out this year, and we might revisit that, but this is towards the top of my list for sure.
Absolutely. If you have any questions about it, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and answer whatever we can. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.